You're listening to an archived Cabral Concept podcast. After listening to this show, check out the most up-to-date podcasts available at stephencabral.com/podcasts or search directly on iTunes. And now, welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Today, I want to share a little story with you. It dates back almost 20 years now, and although it does have a happy ending, which is great, I'm very obviously happy about that, it didn't start out that way, and it absolutely didn't even start to even look like there was hope for maybe about a year or 2 years. And so what happened to me can happen to anyone, and probably has happened to someone that you know in your life, if not you yourself. So what I want to do is I want to share this with you, but I also want to share with you the advice that I found that absolutely did turn my life around. Did it turn around the next day? No, but it gave me a formula. It gave me a way of thinking that not only would it help me eventually get better and create the life that I wanted, but it would actually turn into more of a life space philosophy. And it's now what I try to share with others. It's that it's not just sharing hope, because it's not just about hope. Hope is good. You do have to have it. But what you need is an actual formula, an actual system that you could implement, that you could start to think about, that you can start to use in your life to turn things around. So if you're someone who finds yourself 20, 30, 100 pounds overweight and you've had difficulty losing weight, this will help you too. If you're dealing with an autoimmune-based issue or skin issue or some type of sickness or illness right now, this will help. If a family member is dealing with a hardship as well, you can use this same philosophy. The same goes career-wise. What I want to share with you is this, is that the advice is fairly straightforward, but it honestly takes a deeper reflection and looking inwards to yourself to find out that strength. So what I find is that when people are given a hardship to deal with, they can usually take one or two different paths. The first path is acceptance of what you've been told, and that allowing that to then become your life. So for example, about 20 years ago, although I was extremely sick, I literally could not walk up a flight of stairs. My legs would give out on me. They would start to burn after just about 5 or 6 steps up, walking up a flight of stairs. My heart rate would begin to race. It would feel like I was having a panic attack. I would have to literally sit down or lie down before I could even make it up that one flight of stairs. I had to leave school. I couldn't swallow. My glands were swollen. My lymph nodes were swollen. In my entire body, my immune system was literally shutting down. So, but when you looked at my blood work, everything looked normal for the most part. Everything looked normal. White blood cells were a little off, but everything else looked normal. So I was told that I had what's called a mystery illness, and they couldn't figure out what it is, and that I had no hope for overcoming it because there was nothing more they could do. So I was just sent to go home. I saw specialist after specialist after specialist. And as basically a teenager, that makes you, it doesn't give you a lot of hope, right? This is your formative years, and you're being told by experts, by adults, that there's no hope for you. That's it. And you're basically going to have to live like this. And if something gets worse, then maybe they'll be able to fix me then, because then they'll have something to go off of blood work wise. So I had two choices, basically. I could accept that, and why wouldn't I, right? I was being told by the best doctors at the very best hospitals in the world that I had some type of illness or disease that was essentially uncurable. Not only was it uncurable, they couldn't even figure out what it was, yet my whole body, all of my systems were shutting down. My endocrine system, my immune system, hormones, all of these specific things. My blood sugar was off the chart. And again, so for me to say, well, if these experts can't figure it out, obviously, I can't figure it out. I'm just going to have to learn to live with this. But then there's this other part of you that sometimes, raises its voice a little bit, saying that you can't live like this. You can't accept this. You're supposed to have more out of life. And so at that point, you can actually just say, well, I can accept this, or I don't have to feel sorry for myself, right? And believe me, there was many weeks, there was many months, and there was more illness because I did feel sorry for myself. I did feel like a victim. I felt terrible. I asked myself, why me all the time? Why did this have to happen to me? I wasn't thinking that everything happens for a reason. Not at all. Not at all was I at that time. I was angry at everyone. Anyone that you could think of, I was upset with. I was irritable, and that's because my entire body was literally failing on me. I had to leave school. I had to leave all my comforts, right? And be kind of thrust into this world that I didn't want to be a part of. So what I had to start to do was literally start to just work on my mindset and my thinking. And part of it was just saying, I refuse to accept what I've been given. I refuse to accept what I've been told. And again, this can go for any walk of life, any part of life that you're not happy with right now. And so what I did was say, I'm going to somehow try to figure out how to get well. Nobody knows, and that's okay. It's my job now. Believe me, hey, this is how I felt. Like, the time is going to pass anyway, right? I'm either going to stay sick, I'm basically dying, my body is shutting down, but I'm not dead. I'm still moving forward. So I have two choices. I can just remain like this, or I can try to figure this out. I can try to do something. Maybe there's someone out there that has lived with this before. And so although there was no internet back then, so I mean, maybe there was dial-up or whatever, but we didn't have it, my family. And so what I did was I just started to read books. And the books, it gave me a little bit of solace. Like I took a little bit of heart and that I was moving forward, that I was doing something, right? Because I figured that no matter what I read, no matter what nutritional supplements, no matter what foods I tried, it probably wasn't going to cure me, right? But I believed that it would at least maybe move me in the direction I was supposed to be headed. That was my big first aha. That was my big first step, is understanding that I didn't have to get better tomorrow, and most likely I wasn't going to. When I stopped thinking that I had to wake up and be better tomorrow, all of a sudden, I took the weight off my shoulders. I knew that was not going to happen. I understood after many months that was unrealistic. But what could be realistic is that maybe 4 months from now, maybe 6 months from now, I could start getting 5% better, 10% better, and that I wouldn't have to live like this my entire life. So at some time, I started to make that switch in my mind. And believe me, I was not perfect, and I relapsed many times. Because remember, I didn't have a plan. I had nowhere to go, nothing to do. I just started reading dozens of books, and then hundreds of books, and then now it's become thousands of books. It didn't take me thousands of books to get here. What just propelled me to read thousands of books is now understanding that anything anyone suffers from can be cured. Anything anyone can be, with the right program, the right protocol, with the right mindset, and all of those specific things. So then what I went from there is, okay, I'm going to start to model others. This person worked with this doctor, and they had something that kind of sounds like what I have. I'm going to start down that path. And when I did that, I started to sometimes see some results. And so I just kind of took notes in my journal, in my book, about, okay, this seemed to help, but I was doing a lot of different things, so I'm not exactly which one it was. And so then I would start to cut some out. I would start to not feel again very well. And then I would kind of give up, and then I would say, okay, let's move on to the next protocol, which is what you shouldn't do, right? But this is what everyone does, right? Literally, my path is like yours, is like every single person I see that walks into my office, right? So I saw people all day today, and it really is the same story until we sit down and we start to really go through this. And so what I then realized was that it's not always focusing on the end result. It is, right? So your goal is either to lose weight, it's to get well, to lead a more fulfilling life, to be happier, any one of those goals. And that's your end result. That's what you are seeking. But just seeking that end result, just believing in that law of attraction is not enough. It's also putting the law of attraction into action, right? So you can have the end result, and you can dream about it, you can wish for it, and you should, but you need to also do the work. So what I realized was this, that yes, we all know what our end goal is, right? We should focus on that, but what we really need to focus on is the work. And that's simply doing the things that are going to get us to that, dream home, that dream job, that perfect body, that robust wellness, any of those things, right? It's the work that gets us to that end goal. So then that, to me, actually started to become therapeutic. I no longer had to focus on getting well. It was not even really the option. My focus was, okay, I don't seem to do well if I work out every day with weights, basically. I seem to do better if I work out every other day. Okay, so now I'm going to focus on that. I'm going to get a good workout. I'm going to do every other day. I seem to do better when I don't eat really heavy foods in the morning. That seems to really zap me of energy. Okay, so I'm going to save my heavier meals for a little later in the day. And I just kept working and doing this work and writing it down. But at the same time, the whole time I had focused on that vision. So I knew I had to do the work, but the vision for my life now became, I'm not going to be someone that complains. I'm not going to be someone that has to suffer. I'm not going to be, that person who's a victim. I'm just not. Whether I stay like this the rest of my life or not is not what I'm focusing on. What I'm focusing on is this is what I'm given. If this is what I have, if this is what I have to deal with, then that's what's in front of me. I have to overcome this, and I will overcome this with enough time, enough patience, and enough persistence. A lot of times we miss one of those, and by missing one of those, we then give up. So what I started to do is I said, I'm going to get well. My life has now taken a turn that I never expected. I'm not sure how this is going to turn out, but what I can tell you is this, and I made a promise to myself, if I ever figured this out, if I ever figure it out how to get well again, then I would share this with the world. And you know what? Even when I figured out how to get well again, it still took me another 7-8 years before I decided to even share that with anyone. And it's because at some point too, like you figured it out, you almost don't want to relive it, right? The pain was still very deep through my 20s, and I didn't want to relive that in my later 20s when I was already feeling well again. And also, I wanted that last 10%, right? So I didn't want to relive it, but I also wanted to be at this just super peak state where I can say, this is it. I know what it's like to climb. I know what it's like being at the very bottom. I know what it's like to climb, and now I know what it's like at the top of the mountain. Now I feel well sharing that with others. So, the truth is this, is that a lot of times we feel that no one knows the struggle that we're going through, right? Because it's ours. It's ours to own. And no one does share the same exact identical struggle, because all of us, each one of us, it really creates our own reality. And that's what I want to talk about next, is that although you have hardships, you're experiencing it through your own lens. But believe me, every single person you come in contact with, almost without fail, 99.99% of the time, they're dealing with their own thing. Is it an exact replica of yours? Absolutely not, right? Because they're dealing with maybe it's addiction, or they're dealing with maybe being overweight. They're dealing with a wellness issue. They're dealing with something that you have no idea what their struggle is. Maybe it's a sick parent, a sick child, and they have to deal with that then in their own way, and that shapes how they see life. But I can tell you is that we all share the same struggle, we just experience it differently. So I know for a fact that we can then change our own reality. We can change our own reality because we can change our perception of how we see the world. And if we see the world not as a victim, and not always as a struggle, and not always against us fighting against something, right? It's not always warring against something. You have to let that go. You have to let the anger go. You have to let the resentment go. When you do that, healing can actually start to take place, because it's this resentment, it's this anger, it's this just why me attitude that doesn't allow you then to break through, because your focus is on why me. Your focus is on being the victim. Your focus is still on lack. It's still on what you don't have rather than what you do have. When you start to shift things, saying, okay, I don't have everything I want, but I'm starting to get better. I actually feel better than I did 3 months ago. Do I feel great? No, but I feel better than I did 3 months ago. And if I feel this much better every 3 months, how am I going to feel in a year from now? Is it a year from now? Yes. Would I like to feel better tomorrow? Yes. Does it happen that way? No. And that once you start to understand that, once you start to understand that literally it is our choice of how we decide to respond to life's events, when we start to see that very crystal clear, then we can start to begin to actually understand, and I believe, rewire our mindset. It's that rewiring of that mindset that allows you to eventually tackle any goal that you have in life. Because remember, once you've overcome one major hardship in your life, now I want you to think back to any one of those that you may have had to overcome. If you've overcome something in your life, you can translate that same power into another event. It doesn't have to be identical, meaning like if you overcame an addiction or an issue with growing up in childhood, you can transfer that same power, that same strength, that same confidence over into any area of your life. And again, we're not perfect in every area of our life. Some not as great spiritually, some not as great with relationships, some not as great in wellness, in weight loss, in career, financial, whatever it might be. But we can take it. It's just we have a lack in that specific area. We have some type of block. So what I can say to you is this, is that it's not possible to skate through life without adversity, right? And I'm starting to think that we don't even want to. Without any of this adversity, there is no way we can begin to shape who we are. So when I became very sick, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And again, I'm a senior in high school. I'm trying to figure out, what am I supposed to be doing? I'm going to be leaving to go to a different state for college. All these things are going to be different. There's no doubt stress played a role in, me becoming sick in the first place. That was only one part. That's, stress is a normal part of life, right? But when I got sick, everything changed, right? Everything changed for me. And now when I look back and I say, wow, if any of that didn't happen, there is no way my life would be dedicated to health, to wellness, to trying to help others in general, right? So what I'm saying to you is if you've gone through a particular hardship, I'm guaranteeing that when you overcome it, you'll be able to then share your message of hope with others. There's no doubt about that. I honestly believe that in the world that we live in, if we're really searching for happiness, if we're really searching for meaning, it really comes from being in some type of service to others. Whether it's being in great service to your family, great service to a parent, to siblings, to people at work, to your greater community, whatever it might be, I believe that is where you actually get satisfaction out of life. It's by doing something that you feel is worthwhile. That's it. There isn't that much that we're looking for out of life. It's feeling, everyone says I want to be happy in life. I don't want to have any regrets. I want to feel like I live a life that was fulfilled. But what is that? What does that really mean? It comes down to relationships. It comes down to, did you give back? Did you leave this world a better place than you came in? And I believe that the only way to truly give back is to share with people how you overcame something, how you got results that you were looking for, and they can then translate that into some other part of someone's life, to be that beacon of hope for someone else. So if I can share with you one thing in closing today, it's really this, is that what I suffered from is most likely not what you're suffering from today. And I understand that. But that doesn't mean we don't go about curing that, to fixing that in the same exact way. It first starts just with believing that there is more for you in life, right? That you weren't destined for this to be, that's all there is, right? It's not. That it can't be. You're destined, you're meant to have so much more. Life really should be something that you get to enjoy. And I know that if I overcame all odds to get well again, when the best specialist in the top hospitals in Boston, including the chief of staff of one of the top 3 hospitals in the world, told me that there is nothing that they could do for me, I'm telling you, you can figure out what is wrong with you and overcome that as well. And what happens with it is simply persistence, is understanding that each day can be better than the last as long as you do the work and you put one foot in front of the other while focusing on a new vision for your life. Also understand that it's not going to happen tomorrow. When you understand that, you give yourself kind of an out, not an out where you don't have to stop, an out where you can say, I don't have to figure this all out tomorrow. I can let the stress go away. I can start to model other people, other programs that have gotten people well before. I'm telling you, if you start to do that, if you start to focus on all the positive, the gratitude that you can give for what you do have in life, I honestly believe you're on the right path. And then the last part to that is when you do overcome it, and you will, I need you, and I really believe that the last step to that puzzle, the last step to feeling truly fulfilled, you overcame it and you're not going to go back again, is to then share that message with others. So hopefully today this did something for you. I think it was probably a little bit more therapeutic for me, and I just really appreciate you tuning in for each and every Mindset and Motivation Monday. Take care, everyone.
I want to sincerely thank you for your support of this podcast. I couldn't do it without you, and I mean that. I truly do. I also want to make sure you knew that we now have multiple ways for you to find your answers to the most difficult health, wellness, weight loss, and anti-aging questions. You can find podcast-specific topics like thyroid, adrenal, hormones, sleep, digestion, Ayurveda, and many more at stephencabral.com/podcasts that will then link you to your favorite Apple, Spotify, and other podcast players. Plus, all new podcasts and weekly exclusive video content is being added to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Stephen Cabral. And that's Stephen with a PH. Head on over and subscribe so that you don't miss any of the exclusive content. Lastly, If you've ever found any of my podcasts or books to be helpful, I would really appreciate it if you could leave a review on iTunes or your favorite media player for the podcast. Rating and subscribing to the YouTube and podcast allow me to reach more and more people and help spread my mission of healing throughout the world. Thank you again for being a part of this movement.